I hope you are all refreshed and ready for the second part. So it's my pleasure to introduce Nick from Strobbo for his talk together with Michael.
So what do? We do workforce management, which means that our customers, via our solution, can do planning. They can generate digital contracts so that everybody can work as in order. They can register that actual time via our clocking systems. We link up with about every payroll company in the Benelux. And then beyond that, we try to give them also insights in their data so that they can improve this whole process. ProTime, so these are some of our customers. I'm thinking that everybody in Belgium at least knows some of these customers. And we do this now for more than 2,000 customers in 4 countries. In 2018, Strobbo was also acquired. This is really not working very well. Gonna go once. Yeah, here we go. So in 2018, Strobbo was acquired by a company named ProTime, which is the leader in time and attendance in Belgium, where that we have over 4,000 clients and do a SaaS revenue, annual recurring revenue of more than 50 million. And ProTime by itself is part of the SD Works group, who I'm assuming also most of you know, where that we are located in 26 countries by now, and do more than 1 billion in annual revenue. Why is this important? Because we are a small team of about 50 people, founded, I think, in the same year than Luzmo. But we are part of a big group, which means that we really need to innovate to stay relative. If we are not relative anymore, then the group will say, okay, we have a lot of customers who are asking for something, so we're going to look for another solution. So this is really putting pressure on us. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Michael to talk about the planning. Okay, I'm going to give you this thing because it doesn't work for me.
Yes, okay, good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the planning, which is just one part of it, but you gave the summary. Maybe just to put it in context, I think when we go to our customers, and apologies, this was in Dutch, and I felt a little bit lazy to remake it, and I should have asked an AI to do this, maybe it would have worked, but okay. Basically, I think entry phase, a lot of our initial customers, they didn't have any planning tools. They did their planning on paper, they did their planning via Excel. You could be amazed at how many companies still do it like that. We offer a solution where you can do it in the cloud, where you can also then do your time registration and all the things that come with that. But we also want to go further than that. We also want to make sure that we can optimize your planning so that you can have a look at your revenue, for example, and your personnel cost. Make sure that you are profitable, and then even take one step further with AI planning. So that's also where the forecasting comes in, but there's a little bit more than just the forecasting. So I'm going to walk you through that a little bit, and then also how we think about it in a product context. Oh, yeah, I have to wait. Yes. Okay, good. So this is just the planning that I made yesterday in one of our test environments, actually our internal environment. You see a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to give you a full demo, but I think the basic premise is really simple. You have some people here, they need to be planned. You have to plan them in a work area so they know what they need to do that day, and you need to tell them when they will be available or when they need to come and when their shift is over. That's the real basic premise, but of course there's a lot of more complexity that comes with that. People have a contract, they cannot work more than a certain amount of contractual hours, but they also need to work that amount of hours to be able to be paid. There's a lot of legal aspects. You cannot force people to work 12 hours in a row, or maybe for some statutes they can only work 2 days in a row, or you cannot plan them longer than in a week than 45 hours. There's a lot of things there going on, so it needs to be correct, your planning. You want to take into account all of these things like weather. We are mainly active in the hospitality sector, so if you have outdoor seating, you want to know, is it good weather? Do I need to plan more people? is it bad weather? Maybe I don't need to plan that many people that day. And you also want to look at your profitability, and we help clients there by being able to say like, oh, you expect to make this much money if they know that. Okay, then you can plan no more than this amount of hours, and then we give an indication on that. And we also want to help them with making sure that people can tell, because we have a lot of flexible workers as well in the hospitality sector, so that those employees, they can say, oh, I'm going to be available during that time period, so you can plan them when they are available, and you have less back and forth communication. And also you don't want to plan them when they are absent, for example. So there's a lot of stuff going on to make a correct planning. So it's a complex problem. Yeah, okay, good. So that's where the AI part comes in, and maybe I think it's nice that we're talking about generative AI, because it's fancy, but actually the thing that we're using here is not that fancy. If I look back at, maybe that's not a unique selling purpose, but it's among us here. The thing that we're doing here is actually something that I got taught 20 years ago in university, which is just trying to find a local minimum or a local maximum. So we put a lot of data in that system. We know all of those different contractual data, so people cannot be planned, need to be planned at least that many hours per day. They cannot be planned more than those hours per day, or you can have that per week. They need to have this much rest between shifts. They can no longer be planned, or they cannot be planned for that amount of consecutive days. And we put all the other stuff in, and we combine that with what's here below, which is demand. How many people do I need on a work area for a given half hour or 50 minutes or things like that? And then our AI solution, well, maybe these days you will not call it AI anymore, but okay. I think there's something to be said that AI is a much broader spectrum than just generative AI. We'll come up with a planning for you. We'll look through the entire, for a big part of the solution space, and come up with a planning which is more or less optimal. I say more or less optimal because it's a very complex problem. You probably will never find a perfect solution for a given week if you have a lot of employees and a lot of different constraints taking into place. Which is also why it's important that you can be able to give feedback. I think if you look at this just basically tells you how many people were planned on a given day. The black line here is more or less the same as this. In some cases, we will not plan some people because of certain weights that we put into it. We can tune this system to what customers need. Maybe they want people to be planned anyway, or in this case, maybe there are not enough people available. So you need to make a lot of trade-offs there. So you also need to be able to make that visible to users. Building up to the entire forecasting thing, I think it's good to know where does that demand come from. People can do this manually. They kind of know how many people they will need, and they just require us to fill it in. Some customers, they will use our API, so they have their own forecasting system for revenue, for example, and they know based on their expected revenue how many people they will need to plan. So they just upload it via the API. The next thing, of course, is that we use our historical data to be able to forecast and see where everything is going. I think, Nick, you were going to do this one.
Thank you, Michael. So the thing about having an AI is it's great. Even if the results are amazing. We have, for example, every McDonald's in Belgium uses this system to plan. They did it before well, they said they need almost 2 days per week, not consecutively, but in general, because then somebody is sick and he needs to be replanned and stuff like that. 2 days, and they now cut it back to under 4 hours. So it's a massive productivity gain for them. But even then, it's still an evolution, and yeah, it goes through. But you have to be able to sell it as well. And there are 2 things for that, I think. So first of all, you need, I think, like Bart said, you need to be able to convince them. So you can have a fancy system and a fancy demo, but if they are not convinced, then it's very hard to sell. And to convince them, they need to understand how it works. So we do that well, there are actually two options. And what we do is we try to make a system. Of course, great references help. But then we have a system which they can try out, and we only need about 1 day, maybe 2 days of configuration with their data, so that they can plan it out. So they can actually test it themselves. That's, of course, the best thing. If you can get their data in and they can test themselves, that's the way to convince them. So that's really important. You can have something, but you also need to be able to sell it. The second thing that we have is, of course, reporting. One thing, we already have this AI, by the way, for more than 3 years. And we also, more than 3 years, are working with Luzmo together. Because the reporting is very important, because you can give them something, it can be calculated, and then afterwards, people clock in and clock out, so we know what the actual time is that worked, and we want to report on that. Because that will tell them actually how good that their planning was and where that we need to optimize. And maybe optimizing can be that we need to change the settings of the calculation. That's something that they can do together with our team or themselves. But it's really important to make this visual, because else you're just going to generate something for them, and if they don't know if it's optimal, then they also don't know how good it was. So here you can see in the green one was the ideal hours. The blue one was which was actually planned. So at some point, the planner said, okay, I know this is, according to the system, ideal, but I'm going to do something else anyway. Haha. And then the gray ones are even worse here, because those are the actual hours. So the green one was optimal, and this is calculated afterwards. The blue line is what the planner did, which is still relatively close. But then for some reason, they worked longer than they were planned, most of them. So, and this is something that a business owner really wants to know. So we're trying to make the circle round again. And the biggest problem that we see currently when we are trying to sell this AI is that it works really well, but it works only really well for customers who also can do a very proper forecasting. Like, for example, McDonald's, you would be amazed to see how that they can already know next week how many burgers they will sell. So not how many people will come in, not how many revenue they will, but how many hamburgers they will sell. They are really, really good at this. And if you feed that information into the system, you can do a very good AI generation. But the problem is that most of our customers are not good enough yet on that forecasting. And that is why we are now looking into a new stage of AI for us, which is trying to forecast how much revenue or how much orders or whatever that they need to do. And I think that's also something that Klaas said, don't do AI just to do AI and to have something fancy, but really look at the use cases where that your customer can either gain a lot of time or has very complex issues, and try to come up with a solution for that. And if that is with AI, that's great. And that's fancy, and there's a hype now, and great, but it doesn't always have to be AI. And I think for the forecasting, for the details, Michael, we go back to you.
Yeah, so I think, well, forecasting, it's something that we've been working on and off as well in the past years, and I think there are some lessons learned there that I actually wanted to share here. So let's see. I actually took an example. So I took some data from one of our customers. They're aware that we did this experiment, by the way. This is, well, it's not the exact same data. If I show you the raw data, you will see a lot more fluctuations, but it's just, I've cleaned it up a little bit to make my point, so forgive me if it looks a little bit like cheating, but the point will be come across a lot better. I think forecasting in itself is a solvable problem. We know that. We can pick algorithms, we can feed it in the data, and we can know, like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll probably end up there. We did this, by the way, and if anybody is interested afterwards, I can show you the real graphs. We actually predicted for that customer where they would end up like 2 or 3 years later. So that's very nice. We can actually do that. We can look in the future. But of course, that's a prediction. Reality sometimes happens. Anybody any idea what happened here? Yeah, okay. So that was the nice thing. We did this experiment like around the time of the after the second wave hit, and instead of having a wave with our customers, you just see this dip. So if you then do the forecasting again, it will end up here. You have very big variance. It's not really usable. After the first wave, you might end up here. And so which would it be? And I think that actually begs the question, if you start thinking about forecasting, I think the thing is, where do you want to use your forecasting for, and what do you want to achieve? What we actually want to achieve is not tell customers like, oh, your expected amount of people that you need to plan or hours that you need to plan is going to be this in like 3 years. No, we want to, in the next couple of weeks when they make their planning, we want to be able to give them relevant information. So we train something, we train a model, and we should just be able to give a really good prediction in a small amount of time, like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. The difficult thing, and I think that's actually the nice thing then about COVID happening, which is maybe one of the few nice things, I guess, is that it gives you new cases, because normally if COVID would not have happened, we would have never thought about this, but now we know that we might really need to look at algorithms where we want to be able to adapt to those changes. At this point in time, we actually want to be able to make predictions which kind of give you an outcome here, instead of actually just going back, because we want to help them even with the current situation. So you need to look at algorithms which are able to adapt. So in this case, we actually did a study where we compared a lot of different algorithms, and the weird thing about was that at that point in time, we experimented with a couple of newer machine learning algorithms. It turned out that some of the older heuristic models that we were able to use actually gave us better results. So it's also not the thing that if you look at AI and you say like there's newer stuff coming out in AI, that the newer stuff will also always give you the best results. So that's also maybe a good thing to remember. So okay, we wanna close that loop. And of course, I think the main thing here is if you want to close this loop, that it's also very important to be able to give your users feedback on this kind of data. So they should be able to see, if they are using this kind of system, okay, what did I think was going to be planned? What did I actually plan? And what did I plan? And what was actually performed? And what did people do during the time registration? In this case, I don't know where I pulled the graph from, but in this case, we were actually overestimating a lot. So that's, you probably want to have a look at what your algorithm is doing there. So also there, I think the point there being that if you don't close that feedback loop, the next thing that you will probably be doing, I think that's maybe the point that I wanted to make here before I completely forget to mention it, is if you do your reporting, this will actually help you with your forecasting as well, because what you want to do is look at your data and also give maybe your users ways of tweaking the forecasting after a while. So instead of them using the reporting to actually optimize their planning, maybe you're going to assist them to actually do the forecasting. So I'm going to diverge a little bit, because the thing is maybe also empowering. This is not only about the forecasting, but all of this work that we did and feature development that we did surrounding AI actually also shaped our vision of where do we want to go with our product regarding AI. And how do we need to think about the users, and which features do we need to develop? So I wanted to share a couple of things there. This is actually a nice one that I came across a couple of weeks ago. For some reason, it's quite old one, and then for some reason it popped up in my feed again a couple of weeks ago. And it has nothing to do with AI, by the way. It's from Sean Blanc. It's a blogger. He talks a lot about productivity and stuff like that. If you look at your own work, I think if you want to look at what you should be working on, you can classify it in these 4 quadrants. You have the category with only you can do this, and you have anybody can do this, and there's stuff you don't like to do and stuff you like to do. What a lot of us typically try to do is, well, we do this. What you should actually be doing is this. You should be doing the things that you can do, and all the other things you should be trying to push that to other people. So that got me thinking, well, because I was also doing a lot of stuff regarding AI, and that then triggered me like, okay, maybe this is the thing where AI can actually be something, and it doesn't become really anybody can do this, but it becomes AI can do this. I think AI can solve a lot of problems here. They can probably solve a lot of problems here, but if we really think about it from a user perspective, what do we want to solve? We probably want to solve these things. We want to solve it here. And what we will probably end up seeing in the future is that this line where AI can do this, it will move further and further because it's still evolving what it can do. I think from a product owner perspective, in my role, I'm really looking towards use cases where I can help users with this, more than this at the moment. Because if you take something away that they like doing and you leave them with something that they dislike, that's a potentially dangerous situation with your product. And then, yeah, we actually have more or less the same graph as Klaas showed regarding the cloud thing. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. It was Greg Larman, the founder of Large Scale Scrum, who also showed a presentation with this in it. I think it's a nice slide. I think we're at a point in AI, disregarding all the hype, where we actually don't know where it's going to end up, but we're more or less here at the moment, I think, and we're going to see a lot of improvements. Yesterday, Adobe announced the new Firefly version. If you look at the difference between the first version, it's gigantic. Probably, realistically, it will cap out at some point, maybe because we stop writing our own text and you start using AI to write text, and we have nothing to put into it to teach it anything new anymore, but there's still a lot of growth and evolution there. And I think for me that's a good thing to think about is if you look at those capabilities, how does that relate to your users, and how does it relate to the trust of users? We're probably here at the moment with our AI capability. It will grow, but there will always be a balance that we need to look at for with respect to the users. I can be very excited, and I think if my daughter, she's 13 years old, if she needs to do a book report, maybe she will let ChatGPT generate the book report. Maybe ChatGPT starts dreaming up of some things that happened in the book, and then she fails. So it's something that, I mean, you have to be careful not to overtrust it. The other thing is, of course, yeah, maybe the output of this AI is that you're getting is so complicated that you don't understand where it is coming from. You don't know why it is doing something. You're thinking, this is wrong, or it's even creating more work for me than it's actually solving. So you become very distrusting. So I think from a product point of view, and if you're developing a product, you need to be very thoughtful of this relationship with your users and look at, can I actually resist what in this case the authors of this one called calibrated trust? I think that's for me something it's really something that we want to evolve towards, because it's definitely not what we did at the beginning. At the beginning, when we did the AI planning, there were a lot of questions about it, and it was very difficult to explain to people why it was doing something. And then for some reason now it's jumping out. Well, the point there is that, and that's maybe something, this will pan out, this will not pan out, but it's something that I at least am following very actively. And if you've heard about it, but it's a concept what they call explainable AI. If you look at a lot of AI systems now, they're just black boxes. You put in your text or your photo, something comes out, and you don't know why it is doing this. I think we will see an evolution where, especially for certain types of products, we will get more insights in what the AI is doing, and I think that will leverage us again if we can then use data visualization and insights to kind of guide our users through that entire process. If we do a planning or if we do that forecasting, I think it's even better if we can explain to them, well, we made the forecast and we made it because last couple of years, if it was a sunny day like this, and it's the day after a holiday, well, you kind of had that amount of people planned. It gives confidence. It builds that trust relationship up. So I think that's an important one, and for me, that's something that I'm really actively looking at that branch of AI. So yeah, I think it's also the point that I was making before. I think what we will see is the insights that we're going to gather. We will feed them back again into those different AI blocks, whether it be our planning AI or our forecasting. And I think that's also a nice thing. I think AI, we might be saying now within our application, we're going to do AI. I think what we really need to be thinking is, how can we combine all these different AI technologies into something that can make a distinction and can add value? It doesn't really only need to be generative AI. It's about how can we combine these systems into a complete story for our users. So yeah, that was about it. And I used Bing Image Creator to create all of the images. And it really, I don't know what it does, but I think there was one with text. Text is horrible. So yeah. So okay, that was a presentation. I don't know if there's time for questions or if anybody has a question. Yeah.
I really like that entire thing that you're explaining, and I was wondering, where do you put the human back in your job? Because if I put myself, like, I'm really used to build planning in a hospital, there is that experience that I have, which basically AI is most of the time starting a bit like not really smart at the beginning. And I was listening to a couple of podcasts where people are using human to already pre-train the AI to be more efficient. What's your take on that? Is human still very important in developing the models, or can you do it just without the humans because the technology is now so powerful?
If I may take this one, Michael.
Yeah, sure.
And I think what Michael was trying to explain that, well, first of all, I don't know anybody who says, I like to sit 2 days behind my computer and I'm gonna make the planning. Yes, bring me 3 cups of coffee, here's my music, I'm gonna start. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna do this again next week. So I don't know anybody who does that. So we're really focusing on the thing that most of our users, because we're automating it, but most of our users don't, it's not their hobby to create a planning. So that's why they like the system, I think. But it is really important that we can do basic checks on the correctness of the planning, like Michael showed in the screenshots, that we, like, if a planning is not according to HR legislations, they are working more than 9 hours per day or whatever, then we can check it for the user, but it's still important that the end user takes a look at it. So we will always remain in the system, I think. And yes, I know that we have users that say, oh yes, by the way, I'm gonna click the button, then I'm gonna wait 6 minutes or so, because that's how long it takes to generate. And then, yeah, I'm gonna plan like the last 3 things, which was not planned by the system, for example, and that's it, or send it out. But that's not what that we ask our customers. We want to help them, and we want to help them save time, and we want to help them solve complex issues. But I don't think that the human part will go, because the human part also always knows a little bit more about the employees and the relationship with the employees. And the relationship is something that's between humans.
Yeah, and I think picking up on that, our users, or at least the people who do the planning, that's really not their main job. So it's small part of it, not related to planning, but we also do the reporting. We did some work on our reporting lately to kind of make it faster and make it more accessible. One of the feedbacks that I got was like, ooh, the new thing is a real lifesaver, because before, if I could not make the report, I had to spend a lot of time for it. I only have 5 minutes a day for this. So I think the less friction that we can create in the app, the more that we can make people go back to their normal day-to-day job.
Any other questions in the back?
Really like your one of the last slide about the fact that we need to clearly explain to the user with the black box why those that I took that decision, but that's only possible because the current model is trained by human rules, and you validate or not some result, and that will be less and less the case, because maybe some rules is not just known by it's still not known by the human, and the machine will find it by its own, and so it will be harder and to explain. Do you have an idea about how we will be able to keep that possibility to explain to the end user and keep the trust by a model which will not be trained by a human?
That's a very difficult question. I think I can only hope that we see some kind of evolution in that, and that it's something that because I'm also not an expert in implementing AI system and all of the technology that's behind it. I really hope that this is a field that gains more interest, because I think the relationship between AI and humans is going to be something that will exist for a long time, and because it ties back to that AI capability. I also think that we will probably have to, the way we work and by using AI will evolve over time. We'll be able to do more, and we will need to adapt. But I also don't think that AI systems will replace everyone. It will change the way that we do our work for sure, but it won't fade out. So for me, this is something, if I put it in here because personally this is something that I really believe in, and that I want to advocate a little bit. But I also have no idea if this will ever really happen, and how feasible it will be. Yeah.
I think it's a very difficult question, but in our case, I mean, specifically for our tool, the answer is not so difficult, because if, let's say, the planning AI goes rogue, the planning is created for humans. So the planner will know very quickly if his humans, or his employees in this case, are not content, are not happy. And also, if that goes on for 4 weeks, at the end of the 4 weeks, they need to get paid. So it's going to show up there anyway. So I think that for us, it's very normal. But if you start using AI, then also make sure that there is some kind of mechanism that checks if everything is still okay. And it can be a human interaction, but yeah, you need to know as a product owner or as a developer or as an owner, if something is off, then you need to be the first to know.
All right, thank you.